Today on NewsWatch, split decision. Voters send mixed messages in weekend contests across the nation. Find out which candidates did best.
It's terrible because we're not able to be grown-ups in a way. We're not grown-ups. We're just, when you have those people demonstrating in the streets, again, they're just asking for Santa Claus.
Why people living in socialist countries say the system doesn't really work. And exposing the Antichrist, why some Christian teachers believe the man who leads the world to destruction will be a Muslim. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Charlene Aaron. Split decisions in both the Democratic and Republican primaries this weekend. On the Republican side, Cruz gaining ground on Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders still giving Hillary Clinton a run for her money. That came as the two Democratic candidates held their debate in the now notorious Rust Belt city of Flint, Michigan. Dale Hurd has the story.
In the land of General Motors, Hillary Clinton was playing to her audience.
I voted to save the auto industry. He voted against the money that ended up saving the auto industry.
If you are talking about the Wall Street bailout, where some of your friends destroyed this economy, excuse me, I'm talking.
The Democratic candidates met in Flint, Michigan. Michigan holds its primary election tomorrow with 147 Democratic delegates at stake. Voting will also take place in Mississippi and for Republicans in Hawaii and Idaho. The two not only talked over each other, but laid it on the Republicans for some of their mudslinging.
Compare the substance of this debate with what you saw on the Republican stage.
We are, if elected president, going to invest a lot of money into mental health. And when you watch these Republican debates, you know why.
Sanders notched wins in Nebraska and Kansas, while Clinton snagged Louisiana. On the Republican side, Super Saturday was Ted Cruz's biggest night yet. Record turnout handed him decisive wins in Kansas and Maine. Trump took Louisiana and Kentucky, but with Cruz close behind in second.
I want Ted one-on-one, okay?
It has to be head-to-head.
Although Marco Rubio would win Puerto Rico on Sunday, he continued to disappoint over the weekend.
Marco Rubio had a very, very bad night, and personally, I'd call for him to drop out of the race.
Trump now has 384 delegates, and Cruz is not far behind at 300. Rubio is well back at 151. There looks to be no quick end in sight to the race for president for either party. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Tributes are pouring in for former First Lady Nancy Reagan, who passed away over the weekend. Mrs. Reagan died from congestive heart failure at her Bel Air home Sunday morning. Flags are now flying at half-staff at the nation's capital. Praise and respects for Nancy Reagan came from Republicans, as former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger paid respect to the former First Lady.
She was one of the greatest First Ladies, an extraordinary human being.
And Democrats, as President Obama tweeted this photo saying, "Our former First Lady redefined the role in her time here." Nancy Reagan will be laid to rest at the Reagan Presidential Library alongside her beloved late husband. Outside the library, families are leaving flowers for one of the country's most memorable and influential First Ladies. Ronald and Nancy Reagan had a love story that spanned more than 50 years, with Nancy saying her only mission was to back her Ronnie and to strengthen his presidency. Nancy encouraged Ronald Reagan to run for the White House again in 1980 after his close loss to President Ford in 1976. He didn't want to try again, but she encouraged him, and he won in a landslide. And once they were in the White House, she kept an eye out for his best interests. She said, "I'm a woman who loves her husband, and I make no apologies for looking out for his personal and political welfare." There was also controversy when Mrs. Reagan also turned to astrology during her time in the White House, using it in the president's schedule. She told Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show in 1989 why she did it. She thought it would protect her husband after the deadly assassination attempt in 1981 that nearly took his life.
That all came out of the shooting. And you can't really describe what you go through when your husband is shot and almost dies. And most people didn't know that. There were 2 times that they came to me and said they couldn't find his pulse. He was very close to going into shock, and if he had, then that would have been it.
She said it didn't affect any major decisions. In the final words of his last big speech, Reagan called on Nancy.
Before I go, I would like to ask the person who has made my life's journey so meaningful, someone I have been so very proud of over the years, to join me. Nancy.
After Ronald Reagan revealed in a public letter he had Alzheimer's disease in 1994, Nancy became even more the protector of his life and his legacy, calling it a, quote, long goodbye. When President Reagan died in 2004, Nancy planned his funeral. At his gravesite, this iconic image was taken of Mrs. Reagan kissing his coffin. Nancy also told ABC's Diane Sawyer something that Reverend Billy Graham told her about the promise of seeing the love of her life again in heaven.
I just want you to tell me that when I go, that Ronnie's going to be there waiting for me. And he said, oh, yes, absolutely, Nancy. You sure? Billy says so.
And we'll have more on the events remembering Nancy Reagan at CBNNews.com. Well, North Korea is threatening to launch nuclear strikes against South Korea and the United States. The two countries began joint large-scale military exercises today. Last week, Kim Jong-un ordered his nuclear commanders to be ready to launch at any moment after the UN imposed strict sanctions on the North for testing ballistic missiles. North Korea often makes dire warnings when the U.S. and the South practice joint military drills. The country has a small stockpile of nuclear weapons, but no one is sure if they are able to deliver them on missiles. Terrorists bombed an area south of Baghdad Sunday, killing at least 61 people. The suicide truck bomb also wounded another 95 people. The attack targeted a security checkpoint at one of the entrances to the city of Hilla. The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attack. It has been 2 years since their town was attacked by jihadists, but the historic churches and monasteries in Malula, Syria, still haven't recovered.
Look, they came even here. Look what they have done to our church. All smashed, burned. They have stolen valuable icons and have burned those which have no value. Even the bowl of holy water and clothes of priests were burned. Even the stones were broken.
The Russian government recently organized a trip for international journalists to visit the area. Residents recalled how they felt when the Syrian army reclaimed their city from the terrorists. The jihadis had also abducted the local nuns who were later freed for ransom. The rebels still hold power in the capital's eastern suburbs. Well, modern-day martyrs, that's what Pope Francis called 4 nuns killed in an attack on a Catholic-run nursing home in Yemen on Friday. Speaking to a crowd in St. Peter's Square, the Pope said they are not in the news, but they gave their blood for the church. The nuns were members of the Little Sisters of Charity, the order founded by Mother Teresa. On Friday, gunmen forced their way into the home and went from room to room, handcuffing and shooting victims in the head. 16 people died in the attack. It happened in the port city of Aden in the south. Al-Qaeda and ISIS are strong in the region and have attacked churches there in the past. Coming up, while many young Americans are feeling the burn, the people who live under socialism are issuing a dire warning. Be careful what you wish for. Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders has been campaigning on the promise that socialism is the answer for the problems with the American economy. And he's attracted a powerful audience of young people. But as Dale Hurd reports, critics say they don't know what life under socialism is really like.
Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders thinks what America needs is socialism.
Health care should be a right of all people, the right to go to a public college or university tuition free, at least 3 months of paid family and medical leave.
The 74-year-old senator has become a rock star to many millennials who believe in his message and like all the free stuff he's offering.
They say he is saying all the things that I need and I want. I want health care. I want an education. I don't want to have to be paying back my student loans for years and years and years.
Have a lot of student debt. I think that he's going to do great things for education.
Gender equality and equal pay and equality for everyone.
Sanders is careful to call his program democratic socialism and doesn't mention Cuba or North Korea, where the average person makes less than $2,000 per year, or Venezuela, where socialism has resulted in food shortages, or the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, where a young Sanders went on his honeymoon. He talks instead about European social democracies. It's true that Europe has a long history with socialism, and some of it isn't pretty. France is the land where some joke that communism succeeded. The French have the kind of welfare state Sanders wants, and from which the French government is trying to escape. France is trapped. Having built a welfare state it can no longer afford, it keeps raising taxes, killing the businesses that it needs to fund its welfare state. While Bernie Sanders has said he would like Americans to work less, France's socialist president François Hollande is trying to get the French to work more by ending the 35-hour work week. But the French don't take kindly to having their welfare yanked by the government. They tend to protest and sometimes set things on fire. French free market economist Emmanuel Martin says socialism has also weakened the French work ethic and entrepreneurial spirit, making people psychologically dependent on the state.
Individuals cannot be responsible. They need daddy, the state, to do things for them. It's terrible because we're not able to be grown-ups in a way. We're not grown-ups. We're just, when you have those people demonstrating in the streets, again, they're just asking for Santa Claus.
While polls show most Democrats in the U.S. now believe socialism has a positive impact on society, half of French young adults say they would flee France if they could, because the future looks so bleak.
The entrepreneurial young people of France, they are heading elsewhere. They're going to London, they're going to Asia, they're going to the United States.
American millennials are understandably concerned about their futures. They've entered the workforce during one of the weakest economic periods in decades. Cato Institute fellow Michael Tanner.
Well, look, if you're young and your student debts are piling up and you don't know whether there's going to be a job when you get out of school, the prospect of somebody telling you he'll give you something, that sounds pretty good.
They've seen capitalism bashed in school and in the media as the problem and not the solution.
But the fact is that if you want economic growth, if you want those jobs, if you want prosperity, capitalism is what produces it.
Statistics show that the freest economies are the most competitive. Sanders thinks America should follow Scandinavia.
And I think we should look to countries like Denmark, like Sweden, and Norway, and learn from what they have accomplished for their working people.
But what Scandinavia is Sanders talking about? Sweden, Denmark, and Norway all have lower business taxes than the United States, which has the highest corporate tax rate in the developed world. Sweden has cut taxes and partially privatized health care and Social Security. Denmark has cut back too.
I think he's basically wrong about what they are. Those are not really socialist economies. What they are is capitalist economies, in some cases more fiercely competitive than our own, with social programs sort of layered on top of them.
One study showed Sanders' socialism could cost the U.S. $18 trillion.
But I do believe that the middle class and the working families of this country, their incomes should go up, not down.
And the data shows that the best chance for that to happen is with capitalism. It's what some French wish they had more of. Dale Hurt, CBN News, Paris.
Up next, will the Muslim Messiah actually be the Antichrist? Author and pastor Michael Youssef makes a compelling case after this. The professor who eventually parted ways with Wheaton College over views about Islam is joining the faculty of University of Virginia. Larisha Hawkins will research relationships between religions and races at UVA. Hawkins was teaching political science at Wheaton when she claimed that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. and she put on the headscarf worn by some Muslim women to counter what she called vitriolic rhetoric against Muslims. Wheaton College announced last month that it and Hawkins had reached a confidential agreement for her to leave. Well, it is a question that Christians have asked for centuries. Who will be the Antichrist? One popular pastor argues in a new book that this false Messiah of the end times will be a Muslim. Paul Strand brings us that story.
Over the centuries, people have guessed wrong again and again that the Antichrist, that ultra-violent world dictator, was soon to appear. But Dr. Michael Youssef of the Global Outreach Ministry leading the way believes only now are conditions set for the coming of that evil one.
What Dr. Youssef's found and talks about in End Times and the Secret of the Mahdi is how what's going on in our world right now is leading straight towards those events prophesied in the book of Revelation.
I came with the conclusion that we are coming into that period of time like we have never seen before in history.
Hailing from Cairo himself, Youssef deeply loves the Islamic people, but believes Islam is hurtling us toward the dark days of the Antichrist, as the promo for his book shows.
He will lull the world into believing in him, even worshiping him as their Messiah. But he will end up abusing humanity like they have never been tormented before.
This biblical scholar's been researching Islam's beliefs in their end times Messiah, alongside the Bible's revelations about the Antichrist. His conclusion?
Christians know him as the Antichrist. Sunni Muslims know him as the Muslim Christ. Shiite Muslims know him as the Mahdi.
Youssef quotes Muslim scholars on what Islam preaches about their Messiah.
Their Messiah comes. He's going to cover the whole world. He's going to rule the world. And he's going to declare himself to be a Muslim. And he's going to turn on the Christians and the Jews. And we know, of course, the Bible said the Antichrist is going to come and he's going to turn on the Christians and the Jews.
Other parallels he sees between the Mahdi and the Antichrist.
He will call himself the man of peace. That he's going to come at a time of chaos and confusion and people longing for somebody to guide them and lead them and bring them peace because they will be worn out.
Both the Bible and Islam talk about his 7-year global reign from Jerusalem and that this figure of peace will turn hyper-violent.
He's going to begin to persecute people. He's going to demand them their worship. Same thing on the other side, that he is going to kill everybody who does not worship him.
Youssef says some Shiites have actually been trying to bring about the prophesied time of the Mahdi to make it happen themselves.
He will appear when the world is in chaos and he will bring peace. So Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran, basically wanted to stir up trouble and get the nuclear weapon so they can attack Israel and create an atmosphere of chaos so that to force their Mahdi, or the 12th Caliphate, to show up.
And some of the most violent Sunnis are also trying to set off the end times.
Particularly those whom the Middle East people call Daesh or ISIS or IS. They also have that concept that when chaos and bloodshed reign supreme, and that's why they're shedding so much blood, that their Messiah will come.
So if Pastor Youssef's belief is correct that this Muslim Messiah will be the Antichrist, it's the first time in history believers of a major religion have been actively working to bring him into the world and welcome him. But Youssef insists, do not fear.
The Lord said, when you see these signs, lift up your head, because the day of your redemption is drawing nigh. And so far from being afraid and worried and concerned, we should be rejoicing.
Many believe the Bible warns that the world will be deceived by Antichrist's global false religion, at first tolerating and bringing all religions together. In his book, Youssef talks about the already popular coexist bumper sticker, with the Islamic crescent forming its C, the Jewish Star of David for X, the witchcraft or pagan pentacle dotting the I, the Taoist yin and yang symbol for S, and the cross of Christ as the T. Already,
there is something that is rampant among mainline denominations called Chrislam. And there are churches in Canada and the United States where they read from the Quran as well as the Bible.
But he adds that there's a way to be immune from false religion.
If a person is a genuine believer in Jesus Christ, he will not be deceived. That the Holy Spirit is going to give us discernment, that we will be able to tell the difference.
And though they may be cursed as intolerant, Youssef preaches it's time for Christians to insist Christ is the only way, not just one more option.
We don't hate anyone. We love everyone. But there's only one name under heaven by which men and women can be saved. and his name is Jesus.
What Dr. Youssef emphasizes when he broadcasts here from Leading the Way or anywhere he goes is that we Christians need not fear all those scary events in the book of Revelation, but we do have to go through that horrifying time of the Antichrist before we can get to the victorious return of our Christ. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Leading the Way, Atlanta, Georgia.
A chart-topping gospel artist isn't content simply singing about how faith can move mountains. He's putting his faith to work in the lives of young people like himself.
Just keep on walking.
In addition to singing and teaching, Jonathan McReynolds is launching a new nonprofit group called Elihu Nation. The name comes from a young man in the Bible in the book of Job who was frustrated with the elders who weren't offering him much wisdom.
This whole nonprofit is kind of aimed at spreading the wisdom of God. I think it's something that our culture tries to downplay and even devalue, and that's wisdom.
Jonathan is hosting a launch party for the organization. It's happening in his hometown, Chicago, on March 10th. You can find out more information about Elihu Nation at cbnnews.com. Well, that's it for now on CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do it on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day and God bless.